en su programa Café con Leche, la voz de los latinos en América. Estamos transmitiendo desde hermosa 1470M, 96.9 FM. Les habla Lilia Galindo, me acompaña Thomas Elias. Él es un analista político que es columnista de muchísimos periódicos en todo el estado de California y escribe aquí en el Valle del Antílope, en el Antelope Valley Press, 2 veces a la semana. Good morning, Tom. How are you?
I'm pretty good, and we can talk, I think, a little bit more about Donald Trump today because some interesting things are happening in his cases, and there's a very interesting perspective on it that we really need to talk about. There's one of the most striking things about the major Trump case, the one about the January 6th insurrection at the national Capitol, is that he doesn't deny having said any of the things that he said. He doesn't deny having conspired to try to get the vice president to nix the election. He doesn't deny having said many times that the election was rigged and that there was a lot of fraud. Instead, he says, saying all these things was free speech. I'll stop there and let you translate.
Okay.
Then I'll continue.
Bueno, dice, en este día creo que es conveniente que hablemos todavía del expresidente Trump, dice, porque estamos viendo las acusaciones y específicamente en la de enero 6, donde se le acusa de provocar una insurrección. Él no niega nada de lo que pasó, no niega que hubo una conspiración para tratar de que el vicepresidente anulara los votos que se tenían de los electores. Dice, y él no niega en ninguna de las cosas que él ha tratado de hacer fraude a través de decir que la elección era fraudulenta, que no se había respetado el voto, y dice lo que ahora argumenta que es libertad de expresión que está garantizada por la Constitución. O sea, todo lo que hizo malo ahora lo quiere justificar como libertad de expresión. You can continue, man.
Okay. The only problem with what he claims when he makes a free speech defense is that you can't defend a conspiracy to commit a crime by saying that the discussion was merely free speech, because you can't have a conspiracy without talking about it in some way. In any conspiracy, speech of some kind is involved. Either people are talking to each other, or they're emailing each other, or they're texting each other, they're talking in person, or they're talking on the phone, but they're talking. And that's speech, but it's not protected free speech. There's no such defense in any court in America of saying that when you're conspiring to commit a crime, you're allowed to talk about it as much as you want. And even if you attempt to commit the crime, as Trump did, by threatening his vice president, for instance, you're not protected. It's not free speech. It just doesn't work. It's similar to saying that free speech doesn't allow you to yell fire in a crowded theater when there is no fire. And that's really analogous to what Trump did, because he's yelling cheat, 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 rigged, 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 all over the country for 3 months. He went everywhere and he yelled that. And he was trying to get people to panic, which is the same thing as yelling fire in a crowded theater.
Bueno, dice, él está clamando libertad de expresión, dice, pero cuando estás conspirando para cometer un crimen, de ninguna manera se considera libertad de expresión. Dice, cuando hablas para conspirar para lograr algún crimen, pues obviamente que vas a estar hablando con las personas que van a participar para cómo vas a cometer el crimen, pero definitivamente eso no está protegido. Eso de, por ejemplo, de amenazar al vicepresidente con que lo colgaran por no haber participado. Eso no es libertad de expresión. Así es que dice, él se pasó 3 meses hablando de fraude, de que las elecciones estaban, que se las habían robado. Y dice, y es equivalente a como si gritas en un edificio, fuego, fuego, y no hay fuego. Eso es un delito, es lo mismo que él cometió. No hay fuego y no es ese tipo de discurso no está protegido por la Constitución. Okay.
Okay. So here's another example of what he says in calling something free speech. Trump is about to be indicted probably next week in Georgia for having demanded that the Secretary of State in Georgia, Brad Raffensperger, quote, find 12,000 votes for him. Well, that 12,000 votes would have changed the Georgia electoral vote and made the entire national vote much closer than it turned out to be. But there were no 12,000 votes to be found. They had all the votes in Georgia had already been counted. And so when he says to the Secretary of State, find me 12,000 votes, he's asking the Secretary of State to commit a crime, a fraud, by inventing 12,000 votes that never existed and having them all be for Trump. He's calling that free speech. He's saying that when he said that to the Secretary of State, he was just exercising his right to free speech. Well, actually, he was demanding that this man commit a crime. And, you know, that free speech is just not a defense when you're demanding that someone else commit a crime on your behalf. It's similar to what his friend Rudy Giuliani, the former mayor of New York, who's been disbarred for lying about Trump's fraud charges and making outlandish claims about fraud in the election himself. He's been thrown out of the New York bar. He can't practice law anymore in New York because of what he did during that post-election season in 2020. But he's also, in a civil suit, been found liable for libeling, saying untruths and criminal untruths about 2 election workers in Atlanta who he claimed carried in suitcases of fake ballots to be counted on behalf of Biden in the election. Well, of course, these workers never did that, and Giuliani knew it, and yet he kept making that claim over and over and over again as part of their claims of election fraud. So now he has been, in a civil suit, found liable for that, and the judge has not yet determined, the jury in that case, pardon me, not just the judge, but the jury in that case has not yet determined how much Giuliani will have to pay. But that's just another example of you know, Giuliani is exercising free speech by making these complaints about these people. He doesn't have the freedom to tell lies about other people. Similarly, Trump doesn't have the freedom and never did have the freedom to lie about fraud and lie about rigged elections and run all over the country panicking people and getting people to not trust the system of government. He doesn't have that right to conspire to do that just in order to stay in power. I mean, his whole aim, Trump's aim and Giuliani's aim in helping him, was to keep Trump in power when he'd been voted out.
Okay, let me translate this before I forget. Okay, dice, es posible que la semana que entra sea también acusado en Georgia. Él estaba demandando al secretario de Estado que encontrara aproximadamente 12,000 votos para cambiar los resultados de la elección. Y dice, eso es cometer un crimen, porque eso él quería más o menos igualar la cantidad de votos que él había obtenido comparativamente con el presidente Biden, pero eso es un crimen Y dice, así es que cuando cometes un crimen, no hay respeto a tu libertad de expresión. Inventando 12,000 votos que no existían no es libertad de expresión. Dice, también lo que él estaba haciendo es que pidiendo al secretario de Estado que hiciera un crimen en favor del presidente Trump. Rudy Giuliani, que era el abogado del expresidente Trump, le quitaron su licencia para practicar ley en la Asociación de Abogados de Nueva York. Así es que dice, él está acusado de también haber alegado fraude en la elección y sabiendo que no era cierto, y va a ser responsable en una demanda que le pusieron dos trabajadores que trabajaron en las elecciones en Georgia y que él los difamó diciendo que estaban moviendo maletas con votos que no eran válidos, y ahora él está sufriendo una demanda y vamos a ver qué es lo que pasa con esto, para ser castigado también por sus mentiras, y esos no están protegidas por la libertad de expresión de la Constitución. Okay, you can continue.
Okay, so now we're going to see, eventually in the next few months, we're going to see Trump in court, standing trial for these things. And he's going to claim, as I said, that he had a right to say all this stuff. But the fact is, he didn't have that right. He's going to say that it's okay for him to have lied because lying is just another form of free speech. That's going to be his primary defense, and it's not going to work. And so it's very interesting, but the strong likelihood is that we will see Donald Trump convicted of some kind of a crime, one of these various crimes, before the next election. And so we will come down to a situation very likely where a convicted felon is at the top of one of the tickets, is one of the two leading candidates for president. And if that happens, I don't know how we're any better than Guatemala or Nicaragua or other places that we now call banana republics, because they also elect criminals sometimes, and they elect people that they know will conduct military operations against their own citizens. Trump, of course, doesn't exactly say he's going to conduct military operations, but he does say that he wants to that he wants to take revenge on everybody that wronged him in the last election and afterwards.
Bueno, dice Trump seguramente va a tener que testificar en la corte, y dice, y su argumento, él dice que tiene el derecho a decir lo que él quiera y que está bien el mentir, que es parte de la libertad de expresión. Pero eso no va a trabajar, dice, porque ¿cómo es posible que vamos a tener ahora, si él es acusado de una felonía, que esté acusado ya como candidato a la presidencia? Dice, vamos a parecer como una república banana, ya sea como Guatemala o Nicaragua o cualquier otro país que intenta este tipo de cosas para llegar al poder. Es amazing. So, do you know then what is going to happen? I hear yesterday in a TV program that the Constitution wouldn't allow him to be candidate for president if he was accused of trying to take over the country without a legal election, giving a golpe.
Well, there is such a provision that somebody who conducts an insurrection against the United States cannot be elected president. But Trump is not accused of conducting the insurrection. He's merely accused of conspiring to create the conditions that led to that insurrection. That's different. That's a subtle difference, but it is a difference. If he gets elected, nobody will stop him from becoming president, even if he's a felon, because once he's sworn in as president, he'll pardon himself right away, and then he'll be a free man, just like anyone else is pardoned. And we'll all know the history, and it will reflect on the United States of America. If the bottom line, I think, is that if Trump should be elected again next year, I don't know that we're a democracy anymore. It'd be very interesting to see if we can ever recover our democracy after that. Because if he's elected to another 4-year term, does anybody think he'll willingly leave after 4 years?
No.
I'm going to leave you with that question, because I don't think he would willingly leave ever.
Tom, but my concern is not only Trump, but the people who is voting still for him. What's going on? Because tell me, we have a minute only.
These people are convinced. Many of them are resentful of immigrants. They think immigrants are trying to take their place and take their jobs. Many of them are convinced also that the government is out to get them. They don't want to pay taxes. They're just, it's a group of Americans that has always existed. We've had minor insurrections before from people like that. Starting in about 1792, we had the Whiskey Rebellion that George Washington put down. And we had the Civil War when people didn't want to obey the law.
Tom, I have to go. I'm so sorry, but the time is gone. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you
Hasta
very
la
much.
vista.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.